Well, good afternoon, everybody. I know it's been a while, and I am so sorry. Um, we've just been dealing with life here, and trying to finish up this cancer treatment with Jan. Give you a quick update. She's doing very well. She just gets tired easy. She is about halfway through her booster radiation treatments. Her final treatment is this Friday, and hopefully this will be the very last of any treatments that she has to go through. They keep kind of changing things as we move through the process. But she's doing well. She started working at the hospital last week as a nurse, and she's very excited. And it's been an absolute joy to sit down in the evening and just listen to her day and hear her talk about it. And she's just excited and trying to move forward. Anyway, I'm out here in the shop. Have a bunch of plants out here. I've been watering for the last day or so, and just soaking a bunch of them. They're still blooming and blooming hard. Almost all the phals are still blooming hard and still growing spikes and still growing more buds and blooms off. There's a couple that have dropped buds, flower buds finally, and seem to be starting to grow leaves. But for the most part, most of those phals are still blooming. A couple of dendrobiums are blooming, and but other than that, just a lot of growth. Every plant in here has new shoots, new roots, new canes, new bulbs, new leaves. It seems like they're all growing very well. I thought I'd come on and talk about nutrients for just a quick minute, show you what I'm doing at the moment and what I'm using and why I'm using it and some of the decisions I've made. And before I do that, let me, I'm trying to keep this as still as I can today. That's Dendrobium chanchow. Beautiful flower spike on it. Just an aggressive growing little dendrobium, just really pretty, very fragrant. This one's just starting to open up. Almost all the dendrobiums have new growths on them, new canes coming out. They're all popping out new canes, as you can see. Some of them are bigger than others, but they all seem to be doing really well. I've been wiping leaves off, misting them down. I don't normally mist my plants down, but they have not had any dust washed off of them in quite a while, so I've been dusting them today and rinsing them off as I water them. And they're actually doing very well. I've got a couple of plants with an issue or two, but for the most part, they're all doing very well. I'm really happy with the growth on them. One in particular, let me show you, is the Apheopetalum. I only have one of these. I've shown this one before, and thanks to Ed of Ed's Orchids, this one's still alive. He is a wealth of information, and for those who grow orchids, we're truly blessed to have him in our little community. Absolutely. Anyway, this one's doing really well. Seems to be growing well. Has gotten quite a bit of size to it. I just absolutely love the foliage. Has another new growth coming out the back, and the flower spike finally opened up, and I couldn't be happier with it. And the size of it, I'm really amazed at the size of the bud too, the flower. Really good size, I think. There's such unique plants, such interesting details, all the way from the little hairy warts that are along the petals on the sides to all the detail of the throat. I've got a piece of white paper towel hanging back there as a background so you can see the details better. It kind of disappeared in the black, but you can see how the hood protects it from rain, and the slipper itself kind of protects it from direct sun and everything. Very interesting. But what a beautiful flower, I think. It's not a flower you want to sniff and smell, there's no doubt. It has a little bit of a, I don't know, kind of smells like old gym shoes. Maybe old mushrooms kind of thing, Definitely a earthy kind of a funky smell, but makes up for it with the beauty, I think. Such a pretty plant. Such a beauty. And I got this back in September, and it's done real well and just grown and multiplied, and now bloomed. So when I first got it, it had a little bloom, and I broke that one off. It was just barely sticking up. Right there's the old stem from it, but it got broke off on the way to the car, so I never got to see what it looked like. So I'm really happy to see it blooming, and just wanted to share. Anyway, lots and lots of plants out here soaking up the water, soaking up moisture and some nutrients. The nutrients that I'm feeding right now, I'm feeding about 130 parts per million. It might vary, every once in a while depending on what I'm mixing with it, but I changed my nutrient mix around a little bit. Let me explain what I'm doing right now and what I've been doing. And my plants are, they're far from healthy at the moment, I would say. Nutritionally deficient? No, I think they're all good nutritionally wise. They're probably a little bit dehydrated, I guess, at the moment. They've suffered a lot over the past several weeks because of just all the traveling we've had to do and all the running around with all this treatment. And I have not been able to take care of my plants as well. There's the only way to explain it is to explain it. Because I have Parkinson's and the Lewy body issue, out of a week, out of 7 days, there's only several days where I'm functioning properly, where I can walk around and take care of plants and do things. Like when you see me right now holding a camera and being able to do this, I'm having a great day, I'm having a great moment, a great morning, and I'm grabbing my camera and taking advantage of it. I'm not complaining, I'm not bitching, no. I'm just explaining. It has a lot to do with why I'm not on as much as I would like to be, and some time between the videos maybe. And it's progressing. There's not a whole lot I can do about it. It's progressing, so it is what it is. But we're not bitching about that this morning. We're just talking plants and nutrition here. I'm just explaining a few things. Anyway, they're doing great, but because of some of the issues I've been having, I haven't been able to water quite as well. So they're getting a little bit longer soaked today. I mixed up nutrients a while ago. They're out here soaking. Actually, I did mix these yesterday, so they've been soaking for about 24 hours, and I'm off and on. Different ones. Let me pop you on the tripod here, and it'll probably be a little bit more steady. Let me turn you around here. That's a pretty good indication it's going to be a nutritional video when you've got 25-pound bags of nutrients in front of you. These are empty bags. I've taken the nutrients out and stored them properly and safely away. I don't normally buy 25 pounds bags of Jack's 51226 and 1500 calcium nitrate. I don't need 50 pounds of nutrients. Years ago, I used to grow a lot more hydroponics than I do now. I occasionally grow a tomato and a pepper plant or two, and I might this coming summer, but I used to grow a lot of leafy green vegetables and with big floating mats and different things, different setups, and go through a lot of nutrients. But I've been using the J.R. Peters products for probably over 25 years, and the Jack's 51226 and the 1500 calcium nitrate, probably 12 or 15 years I've been using those products. One of the things that's not talked about a lot when it comes to nutrients and when people are growing is confidence, is having confidence in your nutrient mix. You get confidence by having repetitive, successful results and time. I think those two things together, a little period of time, and having good success over and over and over is what gives you confidence in your nutrient mix. I've had both those items. I've been using this product for a long, long time, and I have had great success with it, and I have a lot of confidence in it. I know how plants respond to it, and I know how to use and adjust it when working with the plants. Now with orchids, and I've said this time and time again that I don't have the experience with orchids. I'm new to orchids still. I've just been growing them for 2 years now, a little over 2 years. And I started using this a little more exclusively last fall. And I've shown this last year in a couple of different videos where I've mixed this up and watered my plants with it. But for the most part, I'm not using this or wasn't using this exclusively. Now last fall, I wanted to change over to a different type of nitrogen source. I wanted to make sure I was with a nitrogen source, not a urea or a monocle. And this is nitrate. The Jack's 51226 is calcium nitrate. That 5% nitrogen you're looking at is calcium nitrate. And this is 1500 calcium nitrate. Anyway, these are sold together as part A and part B. The little 4-pound containers that I used to buy are very expensive and hard to come by. And this actually ran me $3 a pound to my door. So what I've done is I've taken 5 pounds of each one of these. I've put that to the side. That's going to last me my lifetime of orchid growing, and the rest of it I'm going to divide up into those small containers like that, and I'm going to send them out to some of my favorite growers on my channel. And I'll talk about that again later on. Anyway, having a lot of confidence in this product and having experience with it, and always having it around is one of the other things, because I usually have it on hand. I wanted to see if I could try it. But one of the other things, one of the other reasons, other than just going to getting away from the ammonical and urea nitrogen in the fall, at cooler temperatures under around 72 degrees, I prefer to use a nitrate versus ammonical or urea. It has it absorbs better under cooler temperatures. It has less tendency to build up in the pots, leave residual in the pots, collect on the roots, cause root issues, change the pH of the media, break things down faster, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It just works better. Nitrate does. So, and nitrate you can use year round. It's more easily absorbed by the plants. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to switch. The other reason was the adjustability that I have with a two-part mix like this. The 5-12-26 is the actual fertilizer itself. That's a completely designed, not a balanced, but a designed micro-macro nutrient mix. But it just has 5% nitrogen, a very, very low amount of nitrogen compared to the rest of the fertilizer. So what they do is, and it's sold as part A and part B, they give you the 1500 calcium nitrate extra on the side. So I can add as little or as much calcium nitrate to my mix so I can adjust my nitrogen level. Now the great thing about using calcium nitrate, and I want to talk about calcium nitrate for just a brief moment here. The great thing about this particular calcium nitrate is it's 15% nitrogen and it's 18% calcium. So for every little bit of nitrogen that I give my plants, they get the same amount of calcium as a backup, plus a little bit of extra as a safety. It's a little bit more than a 1-to-1 ratio. It's a nice, strong, fat 1-to-1 ratio, which is perfect in my opinion for orchids. Just perfect. They are calcium hogs, and you cannot give them enough calcium. You need to keep calcium around them all the time. And for whatever bit of nitrogen you're giving your plants, you need to make sure that you're giving them an equal amount of calcium plus a little bit of extra as a buffer, very similar to what you're doing here. All right. Check your label. Check your nutrient mix. Look at your nutrient mix. How much how much nitrogen is in your nutrient mix, and how much calcium do you have to back that up? You need to make sure you're giving at least that much calcium as whatever you have. If you have 5 or 6% nitrogen in your mix, you need to have 5 or 6% calcium in your mix. If you don't, you need to supplement, or your plants won't grow as well as they should. You're going to have some plants that are going to stall. You're going to have some plants that are always going to have root issues. You're going to have plants that are never going to bloom for you. You're going to have plants that don't bloom properly for you, or big bloom clusters. You're going to have leaf dieback, new shoot dieback, flower spikes that start growing and stop growing, buds that drop off unexpectedly, and the list goes on and on and on. Calcium is responsible for all that cell structure, all that growth. It makes such a big difference when it comes to orchids. Now, another note I want to mention about calcium nitrate is, and I've been growing with hydroponics for years and years and years. I have lots and lots of experience with hydroponics, and I have never, in 25 plus years of growing hydroponically, used calcium nitrate by itself. I don't ever use calcium nitrate by itself. I'm not saying you can't, and I'm not saying that people who do are making a mistake. I'm just saying I don't recommend it, and I don't do it. Calcium nitrate is calcium and nitrogen, and that is it. It has no other micro and macronutrients. It will not make plants grow correctly. It'll make plants grow, but you'll get these really fast-growing, long, spindly, thin, floppy growths with very little cell structure or improper cell structure, and it can really put a lot of taxing on a plant. It can really be hard on a plant, and a lot of plants, it can be detrimental to the health and overall health because they can't grow out of that very easily. It takes a lot of energy and stuff to grow out of that, and a lot of time too. So if it doesn't kill them just outright. So don't give calcium nitrate to your plants without the rest of the fertilizer along there with it. Now, if you have a good fertilizer mix and you want to supplement calcium nitrate to your mix, that's okay. But again, use caution. Mix in different nutrients and different types of calcium and magnesium, etc. You can have issues with that also. All right, just use caution. I wanted to use this mix, for one, for the calcium nitrate, 2, because I can adjust my nitrogen level up and down. I can add as little or as much nitrogen. This is the basic mix. I just add as much or as little nitrogen as I want based on how my plants are growing or the type of plants I have. Winter resting dendrobiums, for instance, don't need a lot of nitrogen at certain times of the year. I can adjust it with this mix. During the summertime, when everybody's growing really, really hard and strong and temperatures are over 80 degrees and the plants are pushing out lots and lots of growth, I can adjust my nitrogen very, very high if I want to. Right now I'm feeding 30-35% of my mix is calcium nitrate. When I get towards the middle of the summer and plants are growing real strong, June, July, high temperatures, my mix might be more 50-60% of calcium nitrate. You see what I mean? I can adjust my nitrogen levels as the plants grow. The stronger they grow, I can increase my nitrogen levels. As I come into the fall and the temperatures start to decrease and the day length gets shorter, I can lower my nitrogen levels if I need to. All right. Those are some of the reasons that I wanted to use this mix. One, I have confidence. Two, I have a lot of flexibility with it. Three, it has a very strong nitrogen calcium ratio, strong 1-to-1 ratio, which I love. It works great on all my other plants. I've had nothing but great success with it. So I started using it a little more exclusively on my orchids last fall through the winter. Now I've got 5 months under my belt of them, and I gotta say, I really like how they're growing. I'm not noticing any issues whatsoever. They all seem to be growing very, very strong. When I mix my nutrients, and it's just as easy showing you this way as it is probably, and it's probably easier this way than it is actually mixing the nutrients. Mixing the nutrients is just such a dull video, and I never hit the numbers correctly, you know what I mean? It just doesn't work out on video right. So let me explain what I do, and it'll kind of answer a couple of questions as I go along. Let me move these bags real quick. I don't want to trip and fall on those. But go back and look at your orchid mix. Read the label on your nutrient mix. How much nitrogen do you have in your nutrient mix? And how much calcium is in your nutrient mix? That is 5% nitrogen, 5-12-26. That's 5% nitrogen on the low side, all right? But I can add up to 100% of my mix if I wanted to have it calcium nitrate, I could. You see what I mean? You have a lot of flexibility here. But look at your nutrient mix and see what kind of nitrogen you're feeding and how much calcium is in your mix compared to your nitrogen. If you don't have a proper amount of calcium with it, you're going to struggle with your plants all the time. You're going to have issues over and over and over. Anyway, this is magnesium sulfate. We'll talk about that here in just a second. Let me move you around here just a tiny little bit. And I'm sorry for the rough photography here this morning. See if I can do it better this way. The containers that I use to hold my nutrients in that's around 6 gallons of water. I take a gallon pitcher from my rain barrel and I dump about 6 of them in there, and that's about where it fills it. So it's around 6 gallons of water. Because I measure my nutrients with a meter and I measure them, it's more accurate that way. I don't have to worry about a teaspoon per gallon measurement. But that is one of the questions that I get asked all the time is, Rick, and it's a great question. It's a wonderful request, and I wish I could give a better response to it, is, Rick, can you please give us teaspoon per gallon measurements or something so we can do this at home? Those of us that don't have a meter, who don't have access to something of that nature, and that's a perfectly legit request. And let me explain things here just for a minute, how I mix it, and it might answer that question as to why it's difficult to give you a teaspoon per gallon measurement. All right. When I mix up nutrients, let me put the Epsom salts out of the way. I always start with calcium nitrate. Now, when I'm mixing my nutrients, I said before, I'm feeding around 130 parts per million. Right now, I want my nitrogen, calcium nitrate to be around 30-35% of my mix. My plants are growing, and they're growing strong. Lots of new shoots, lots of new canes. You can see the canes coming out of those dendrobiums right there. Lots of new growth all around, but they're not quite as amped up or growing as strong as they would be like, in June or July. So right now, I'm around 30-35% calcium nitrate in my mix. So 130 parts per million, 30% of that is 39. I just round it to 40 parts per million. So I'm looking at 40 parts per million of calcium nitrate in my mix. So I take 2 pinches typically between my fingers, and I put it in there and I stir it up with my great big plastic spoon. I stir it till it's completely dissolved, and then I check it with my meter, and it's typically around 40, 42, 39, 40, 42. It usually gets within a couple of points of that number, and that's 2 pinches between my fingers. 2 pinches between my fingers in 6 gallons. I got to remind you, 6 gallons of water, and that hits my number real well. That's all the calcium nitrate I need in there. 2 pinches between my fingers. I know I'm being repetitive here, but I'm trying to make a point. If I took those 2 pinches and put them in a teaspoon, it's probably going to be somewhere around a fifth or a sixth or even an eighth of a teaspoon, and that's in 6 gallons. So you'd have to drop that down even lower by 6 times. Divide that by 6 more times. You see, it's such a tiny, tiny amount that I can't give it to you in a teaspoon or tablespoon per gallon measurement. What I would recommend, if you can't get a meter, and these are inexpensive, if you can't get a meter, use a pinch per gallon, a tiny, tiny pinch of your nutrient mix per gallon, and stir it really well till it's dissolved, and use that on your orchids all the time, all the time, all the time, all the time. If you notice buildup on your pot, then cut that pinch back a little bit, or dilute it in a gallon and a half, or maybe even 2 gallons of water, and see what that does, all right? The meters help you do it very, very accurately, and it takes out all that guesswork, that unknown. You don't know how much a pinch is actually in there, how much is in a pinch and how strong a pinch is. And it depends on the size of your fingers. I have bigger fingers than some people, so my pinch might be larger than some people, and smaller. Some people might have smaller pinches too. So, you know, I don't want to start getting into all that crazy talk about stuff like that, but these little meters are $15 to $20 off eBay. This is what's called a TDS meter, total dissolved solids. They measure in, I don't know if you can see it in the little corner down there by the zeros. Probably not. They measure in parts per million, ppms. You see that a lot in the comments down where I'm talking, or hear me talk about it. Parts per million. To put that in perspective, and I've spoke about this before, if you took like a swimming pool and put 1,000,000 yellow tennis balls in it, you can imagine how many 1,000,000 is. It's a lot of tennis balls. You take 130 of them out, because we're feeding 130 parts per million. You paint them black and you throw them back in there and mix them up. That's 130 parts per million. That's how tiny, tiny of a trace amount that is. And that's what these orchids feed off of. It's tiny, tiny amounts, but you can do that often, 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 often. The water that comes down trees that has nutrients in the jungle and in places where orchids grow is typically, from what I've read, is anywhere from 15 to 25 parts per million, max. Very tiny, tiny amounts, but they have it all the time. Anytime they need food, it's there, it's there, it's there. It's always, always around them, always around them. Tiny amounts, tiny amounts. So tiny amounts, the more often you can feed, the better. You're better off feeding 5 tiny meals than you are 1 big heavy meal. You see what I mean? So the meters, you can find these at garden centers, hydroponic stores, even outdoor shops, because you can measure drinking water, help to go through drinking water. Now this only measures total dissolved solids. It doesn't measure bacteria and other things of that nature that could be harmful to you. So that's a different talk and not something I'm going to get into. But this is a real accurate way. It measures my rainwater all the way down to 1 part per million sometimes even. So really, really accurate way to keep track of your nutrients and know at that point whether your water is any good to begin with and where you are as far as how much you're feeding your plants. You don't have to guess anymore. Anyway, after I take, and I hope that answers the question about the teaspoon per gallon measurement. I really hope it does. It's why it's so hard, because it's such tiny amounts. So after I have a couple of pinches in there, I stir it up and I'm around 40 parts per million of calcium nitrate. Then I'm going to take Jax and do the same thing. A couple of pinches, stir it, check it if I need to add a little bit more until I get to 130 parts per million. And that's my nutrient mix. Now, I've got 30% of calcium nitrate in there. There's 5% of calcium nitrate in the 512-26 already. So that's why I've said I'm around 30-35% calcium nitrate in my mix. And that's what I do at this moment. Now, as the days get longer and the temperatures are starting to increase, and they are significantly for us down here in Alabama. Today it's not. We're cold today, but we have been seeing some upper 70s, and even I think we may even bumped 80 one afternoon. But we're still getting quite cold during the evening time. So as the days get longer and the temperatures increase, I'm going to start increasing the total amount of my feed. Instead of feeding 130 parts per million, I'll go to 150 and 160, 170, all the way up to, by midsummer, when my plants are growing really, really strong and I'm feeding my highest amount, I might be 200 plus parts per million, but probably not a whole lot more than that, because I just feed often, 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 all right? Now, of the 200 parts per million, at that point when the plants are growing real strong, my calcium nitrate is probably going to be more like 55 to 60% of my nutrient mix versus 30-35% calcium nitrate right now. Because the plants are going to do more nitrogen. They're going to require more nitrogen. Plus, I'm also getting them built up and pumped up and ready for fall bloom, remember. And that required a lot of nitrogen to get those plants to bloom like that last year. A lot of nitrogen. That's one of the secrets to those flowers blooming like that. So anyway, that's how I mix the nutrients up. Little pinches at a time, stir it, measure it. Pinches at a time, stir it, measure it. All right. Calcium nitrate and Jax 512-26, that's my basic mix. Now, magnesium sulfate, Epsom salts, I will add that occasionally. There's 6% magnesium in the Jax, but my orchids have already shown me that they require a little bit more than 6% magnesium. I'm having to supplement magnesium quite often. Yours, mate, will probably need the same. I don't know, because I don't know the temperatures where you're growing, or the type of plants you have, or the type of light that they're getting, how long the day length is where you are, etc. Different conditions, different environment, plants are going to grow different. So you need to learn to recognize symptoms of magnesium deficiency. Chlorosis on the leaf, which is light haloing around the edges, or what you'll see is what I call window painting on the leaf. You'll see actual modeling on the leaf, light spots, light sections in the chlorophyll production across the surface of the leaf. Just lighter pieces like that, kind of modeling. That's chlorosis, as they call it. Those are signs of magnesium deficiency. Increase your magnesium. Now, when I feed magnesium or add Epsom salts to my mix, it's usually around 15 to 25 parts per million at a time. So on those days, instead of feeding 130 parts per million, I'm going to feed 150 to 155 parts per million. All right. I add magnesium sulfate or Epsom salts about every third time I mix up nutrients is when I add it. Maybe every second time or third time I'm adding it. All right. The other thing that I use is that people ask a lot about is kelp or seaweed mix. This is Maxi Crop Kelp and Seaweed. It's one of my favorites. This one's just got a spoonful or two left in it. It's just about empty. That's one of my favorite ones to use right there. I use this in the summertime for the extra little bit of potassium, but the Jack's 5-12-26 has 26% potassium, so it has quite a bit of potassium in it. So I won't be using this quite as much as I was last year. Now, I'm using this, but it's more of the frequency. I'm using this maybe once a month right now. As the days get stronger and the days get longer and temperatures increase, I'm going to start using it more frequent. Not more of it, just more frequent. I'll start using it, once every 3 weeks, and then every couple of weeks, and I'll get to a point where once they're outside and it's nice and warm, I'm probably going to be adding kelp and seaweed to them every single time I water them. All right. It's not so much for the potassium as it is for that, because you get 1% potassium in. It's a little bit of potash, but it's not a lot. It does help plants, especially if you have low potassium in your other mixes. And at certain times of the year, definitely is going to help, especially when it's hot and they're using a lot of moisture, transferring a lot of moisture from cell to cell. They need that extra potassium. Excuse me. It's mainly for the amino acids, the vitamins, the enzymes, and those also important hormones, the growth hormones that are in the kelp and seaweed. Some of those species of kelp and seaweed that these mixes are made from grow several feet a day. They have incredible growth rates, and those growth hormones are in this mix. So in nature, hanging on the side of a tree, an orchid, and again, just my opinion on this stuff, but an orchid is exposed to enzymes and vitamins and amino acids and hormones from all types of plants, and all around it would have hormones dripped on it all the time. Increasing those hormone levels, especially certain times of the year, will help those plants increase their productivity, whether it's growing or blooming. Hormones are what tell the plant what to do. Hormones are triggered by the environment, by light and temperature. But hormones are what tell the plant to bloom and tell the plant to grow a leaf or grow a new root or grow a cane. Hormones do that. So keeping those hormones around the plant, especially in your enclosed environment, on your windowsill or in your kitchen or in your basement on your shelves or in your greenhouse, wherever you're growing those, if you're not providing lots of extra hormones to your plant, they're not going to grow quite like they're supposed to either. They're going to grow and they're going to bloom, but they're not going to grow as well as they could. All right? And you'll struggle with them. I'm not saying you have to use lots and lots of supplements, because that's not what I recommend. It's not something I like to do. The less the better. This is pretty much the only stuff that I use. I use calcium nitrate and Jack's 5-12-26 as my main source of nutrients. I add Epsom salts every second or third time I water, and I add kelp and seaweed probably once a month right now as the temperature. And the kelp and seaweed, the amount that I use on it is the same as the Epsom salts. It's usually around 15, 20, 25 parts per million at a time. So on those days when I'm using kelp and seaweed, instead of feeding 130, I'll be feeding 150 to 155 parts per million on those days. Hope that's clear. So it's not a lot, it's just little bits, and it's just all I'm really going to do is adjust the frequency. So I'll be feeding it more often, to the point where I'm feeding it probably every time once I get outside and temperatures are warmer. So hormones, so important, and everybody skips over those hormones. Really forget about it. Let me pop you off here. I've got to watch my time here too, because they'll pop us off. But I wanted to come out and say hello, give a real quick update, talk about a few things. My video is going to end here, so if I don't end it, it'll just cut off, and I don't want to do that. I'll come back on and do a second part of it if I have to. Lots to talk about, lots of growth to show. But Everybody's doing well. I hope you guys are also. Thank you so much for all the great questions, the comments, the time, just to watch the videos. I appreciate it. Have a great, great day, everybody.